Dogman helped me fish. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I had your recent story about a dogman interrupting a man fishing forwarded to me. You see, I had a similar thing happen to me back in the 1980s, and it also happened in the Great Lakes region. The creature I encountered behaved in a way which I interpreted as hostile and bullying, and as a result I was somewhat traumatized by the event. When I read the comments on your previous story, I was stunned to find people unhappy with the witness just for being scared because a dogman sat down next to him. I would like to tell you my story, but I hope your viewers cut me some slack. Just because a large predator asks before it takes your food away from you doesn't mean you really have any option in the matter. And just because a dogman doesn't bite your head off, that doesn't mean it isn't absolutely terrifying to have one coming up and physically touching you, invading your private space. Just because I came out of my interaction alive doesn't mean that I found the experience pleasant. And it doesn't mean things couldn't have easily gone very wrong. If there had been a sudden loud noise, for instance, the creature might have gotten frightened and taken its fear out on me. I know some of you admire the dogman species, and I can't blame you, because they are unlike anything else on Earth. That doesn't mean they're tame like your house pets, though. Heck, some house pets aren't even trained or tamed themselves, so trust me, the dogman is quite feral. Even if you do everything he wants, he can still cut your life short anytime he feels like it, and he is always in control of the situation when you encounter him. At least he was when he decided to sit down next to me. This happened during the brief time I lived in Belgium. No, not in Europe, I mean Belgium, Wisconsin. It's a tiny place, but it wasn't far from the water, and I mostly enjoyed my brief 6 months living there. When the weather was nice, I'd head out to Harrington Beach State Park and sit around, looking at the seemingly endless waters of Lake Michigan. One day an old man told me I should make use of my time and get some fishing in. I told him I'd never fished in my life, and he suggested I fish from Quarry Lake, which was just behind us in the park. He said I could catch salmon, crappies, and bluegills in the lake, and that it was legal to sit anywhere on the shore and catch my dinner for free. The old guy really sold me on trying out the fishing lifestyle, but I never would have tried it in the first place if I had known it would lead to me attracting the attention of a 9 or 10 foot tall carnivorous predator that I'm going to go ahead and call a dogman. Now I can't blame people who don't believe me that I got harassed and all my fish stolen from me by this beast that walks upright like one of us. A friend of mine sent me a link to your video about a dogman stealing a guy's fish, and I was astounded. There are a lot of similarities between that story and my own. I was somewhat surprised by a lot of the comments you got. People were reacting like the witness who sent the story to you was a bad person just because he was afraid of the dogman. Well, those people aren't going to care very much for my reaction either. I honestly thought I was going to have my life ended on that evening. I thought my life was about to reach a painful close. In retrospect, the monster may have behaved in ways that seemed cute when described in an internet video, but which were intensely intimidating in person. I'm not up to that part yet, though. First, I had to go buy myself fishing equipment. This was the 1980s, so the first thing I did was pick up my phone book, probably the Yellow Pages. Do you guys even know what the Yellow Pages were? Anyway, I found a bait and tackle shop, and I explained to the owner that I wanted to fish for salmon in Quarry Lake. He told me what to buy, and sold me a little book as well, which had instructions for how to do basic kinds of fishing stuff that I had never even heard of before. The first day I went to Quarry Lake, I walked out onto the little bridge they have over the water there. You can see an old ruined pier under the very clear water, and I thought this might be a good place to fish from. Nothing was biting, and people kept walking by and saying hello. Some of them kindly pointed out things I was doing wrong with my fishing and seemed to want to hang out and chat. Normally that would be fine, but I was focused on learning fishing, and so I found it distracting. I noticed there were ways to sneak down by the shoreline and fish where it would be difficult for people to gain access to me. It was embarrassing being called out by strangers for my lack of fishing knowledge. I wanted to go hide down in the trees at the edge of the water and become a fisherman by making my own mistakes and learning my own lessons. Over the next week or so, I found some time each day to go and fish for maybe 2 or 3 hours, finally catching a small fish on my 3rd day, which I threw back for being too small. I did not have beginner's luck, that's for certain, but I decided I would go to bed early Friday and blow out my plans for Saturday. I was going to get to the side of the lake before the sun was up in the sky, and I was going to have my first successful day of fishing. I felt certain I knew enough about it that this was all about to finally pay off. So technically I was climbing down a muddy embankment to sit on a rotting old log at the edge of the lake in pitch darkness on Saturday morning. It felt more like it was still Friday night though, as the crickets were loud and the morning was cold. This spot seemed much luckier than anyone I had tried prior, and I got tug after tug on my line. The fish were surprisingly strong, and at first I felt bad fighting them. After I caught a fairly large-sized salmon though, well, large for me at least, I had caught the bug. I actually love seafood of almost any sort, so I was salivating even before I got that bad boy off my line and into my cooler. That entire morning was shockingly successful, and I think I had 3 fish caught already before something changed about the entire area. It was subtle at first. I couldn't make out what was different, but something sure was. I looked around and saw the very first rays of color in the sky, but that wasn't what was strange. Then it dawned on me that all the crickets had stopped chirping, and the woods behind me seemed very quiet. I figured that must just be what happens at dawn, but that didn't feel like it was the correct answer. Then, a stench hit my nostrils that caused me to react instantly. It was a nasty smell that was entirely different from that low tide sort of smell you can get when you're by the edge of a large body of water. This was a land kind of stench. This was an animal smell, and a smell of death. I wondered what could be the source of that odor, and I was about to start packing up to leave because I was beginning to feel genuinely unnerved. In the next moment, a large figure that I at first interpreted as a big man in a dark diving suit sort of slid and jumped down the embankment behind me and landed on the rotting log right next to me. This was not a man in a dark wetsuit. This was a man covered in wet dog fur, and I tell you, he had the worst odor of any living thing I have ever encountered. It wasn't a Bigfoot, though. It did not have big feet, for one thing, and it did not have a monkey face for another. It had the feet and the head of something very dog-like, but not quite Fido. Maybe it was a kind of a wolf, or maybe a primitive ancestor of a dog, because it had such a long snout and such a long snaggled teeth. Sometimes, when a wild animal pounces in your direction, you run, and other times, you freeze. I wanted to run, believe me, but I didn't understand what was happening until it had already happened. That beast was sitting down next to me like we were classmates at school lunch before I even knew it existed. I had to look way up to see its impossibly long fangs and the way its eyes glowed bright white in the relative darkness. I mean, I looked up once, and I was too afraid to look up again. Now, in your first story, the Dogman put his head on the poor guy's shoulder and whined for food. If that had happened to me, I would have dropped dead on the spot. So, no, that creature did not do that. Instead, it just sort of gave me that sad whining sound, and then it reached over and grabbed at my backpack. I could do nothing. The creature stuck its nose in my bag where I had my supplies, including my supply of hooks and bait. He must have been trying to get to the bait, but he got to the hooks instead and pulled that giant snout back out of my bag, sounding more distressed than before. I flinched, as I was certain the giant dog was going to take his unhappiness out on me. Instead, he took my backpack and angrily heaved it into the middle of the lake, barking and growling at it, apparently trying to teach it a lesson. I figured that would be me next, getting thrown through the air into the lake. I was already wondering if he did that, could I swim to the other side and maybe get away from this Midwest monster? I know some people listening hate me already because I was unhappy that Dogman was there, but this guy was so big that I just wanted to cry and wet my pants. I mean, this was the most intimidating land mammal that you can imagine. One time when I was a kid, I stayed over at my grandparents' house and had to take a different bus to school the next morning. Trust me, this is related. On that bus, this big kid came over and started asking to see all my stuff. He wanted to see my notebook. He wanted to see all my textbooks. He was so big that I had no choice but to hand my things over to him one by one for inspection. I didn't know if I would get anything back. After tormenting me to his heart's content, the big kid did give me my stuff back. That didn't make the experience any less traumatic, and I would compare this Dogman encounter to that kid on that bus on that morning. Even when you're released at the end of a hostage situation, it's still terrifying to have been held beyond your control and made to give up your personal belongings to someone else just because they're big enough to have their way. So, I had my cooler of fish, the first adult fish I had ever caught, on the side of me furthest away from the Dogman. He started to sniff around, and I knew he was going to make a play for the cooler sooner or later. And that is when I got a bite on my line. So, I was battling the fish and I was monitoring the Dogman out of the corner of my eye. I knew he was going to grab at that cooler sooner or later, but I was also trying to reel in this very powerful fish. The Dogman suddenly noticed what was happening, and to my eternal joy, he got up and ran toward the fish on my line. I held the line as taut as I could, and the dog raced straight to the end of it. In the water, standing upright like a human being, the beast looked even larger than I had realized. It had hands. This thing had hands. Or at the very least, it had paws so large that they worked like hands. Imagine a monster man 10 feet tall with a dog's head, but opposable thumbs. That's what I was watching tear my fish from the line and begin eating it alive. In the middle of this scene, I realized it was time for me to go. I was shaking all over and my brain was muddled, but I managed to stand up, robotically, knock the lid off the cooler so the Dogman could gain access to my fish. I staggered like a zombie out of that scene. Almost as soon as I was up the hill, I saw people around. The sun was beginning to brighten the sky, and everything seemed so completely normal. Meanwhile, 50 or 100 feet behind me down the embankment, a giant man-thing was eating all the fish I had caught. Perfectly normal, just an ordinary dawn in the Great Lakes region. Now, I do appreciate how rare this experience was. I do appreciate that I got to interact with one of the most remarkable life forms on planet Earth. I hope you can find it in your hearts to forgive me for the fact that I found the experience horrifying and completely unpleasant. I have fished since then, but only in the company of other human beings. Even though I may never be able to make you understand why, I'd rather never have a repeat of the time that Dogman helped me fish. We know a badass named Chris. That is just how it is. We were in poverty, and there came Chris C. to put our channel right back in biz. Please join me in thanking our prodigal executive producer Chris C. for making this episode possible. Chris is a top-tier member, and therefore gets all our perks, including our secret uncensored Sunday stories. And now, here's international TV spokesmongrel Henry Lee Dogman to fill you in on the rest of the deets. Hank? Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it with your friends and family that you think might also be interested. If you would like to see more of our work, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will alert you when we put out a new video. To become a channel member and gain access to our special perks, you can click that join link under each of our videos. Another option is to join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You can join for as little as 99 cents on YouTube or $1.50 at peterbernard.com, and that gains you access to our weekly secret uncensored episodes. If you'd like to see our 21 hours of archives of uncensored Dogman stories, then please join at the $3 level or above. To get to watch our shows in advance of the public, please join at our $10 level. That gets you all the perks. If you join our channel memberships, you need to check our community page here on YouTube in order to get the links to the secret videos and other perks. If you're in the PayPal subscribers club, Peter will email you all the news and links himself. Once joining the PayPal club, which is Peter's homemade club, please give him a chance to see that you've joined and to compose you a personal welcome email, as none of that is automated. But whichever you join, we'll name you an executive producer for the next available episode. Do you have a scary experience that you'd like to share with us? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LA-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. It's a Google voicemail box, so that means it keeps cutting off after every 3 minutes. If your story is longer than that, please keep calling back and we can piece it together on our end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.